What's going on, guys? It's Cimoooooooo. So today I'm bringing to you an updated meta analysis for the May 2018 format. Now, I know YCS New Jersey's right around the corner, and I said I wasn't going to bring to you guys a new meta analysis until that event concluded. However, this weekend we got some preliminary results as to what the format's going to start to shape up and look like as we move deeper and as the format evolves. So I wanted to share with you guys the results and the findings that I was able to uncover, so that way you guys can kind of get a glimpse at what people are thinking moving on into this new format. But before we get into that, I want to give a huge shout out to my newest patrons as always. So big shout outs today to Yamabiko as well as Icy. You guys are the reason that this channel is growing strong. And if you guys want to help support me in the channel through Patreon, then check out the Patreon link in the description below. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So we're going to be going over the top 16 results from ARG Hartford. I got the pie chart up here for you guys, and quickly just to give you a rundown, the top 16 breakdown comprised of 5 Goki, 4 Altergeist, 3 Spiral, 3 Trickstar, and a lone Paleo. Now, ARG results can sometimes be a mixed bag because some people don't consider them like real events, while at the same time though, this was a tournament that actually abided by the new ban list, and there were still some players who are actually rather known in the community that were competing at this event. So, if anything, I think these results are very good to see kind of what people are thinking in terms of how the meta is going to shape up, so that's why I wanted to discuss with you guys these results. Now, ARG Hartford had 7 rounds of Swiss, which means it had to have a minimum of 65 players in attendance and a maximum of 128 before cutting to top 16. Now, even though the attendance was rather low, there were still some very big names in attendance like Joe Bogley, Justin Singh, and Aaron Furman, who ended up taking first place at the entire event. So even though attendance was low, there was definitely a lot of highly skilled players in contention. Now, I want to start off by discussing Goki. I think it's really funny that all the decks that are on here are the ones that showed up on my top 5 meta decks of the format, but Goki I think is the one I underestimated. Now, it's not like I discounted the deck entirely, I just figured a lot of players might be pretty much hedging against that deck knowing it's one of the strongest decks going into this next format. Now, maybe after this meta analysis, or maybe after the coming weekend, or maybe after people start to see Goki is starting to have a dominating presence, people are going to side deck or even main deck more appropriately for the matchup, but for the time being, Goki took up the most top 16 slots out of every other deck on this list. And for good reason, because Goki, while it still is a heavy combo deck, it's able to do some absolutely incredible things. I mean, you're able to establish a full extra link in most cases. Usually a 2-card combo just ends with an absolutely absurd board if it goes completely uncontested. Now, one of the cool things about Goki coming out of this event on top is the fact that there was actually 2 different variants of Goki that were running around in the top 16. There was the more pure streamlined version that was playing the traditional Goki cards and pretty much all the traditional warrior extenders that you can just to help facilitate Invoker and Isolde plays, cards like Junk Forward, Marauding Captain, things like that, you know, cards that we've seen before. But then there was also a slightly different take on the deck, and I think this is OCG inspired, by implementing a hero engine. We're talking cards like Armageddon Knight, Destiny Hero Malicious, Elemental Hero Shadow Mist, and being able to incorporate a card like a Hero Lives. Now, this is really cool because even though you're just taking out some of your other combo pieces to play cards like this, you're giving your deck a lot of extra extenders that it might not otherwise have. One of the biggest issues with Goki is the fact that it has a difficult time going second playing through multiple negations unless you have just an absolutely absurd hand. The deck is very normal summon reliant, and so in those instances, having cards like this can actually be extremely powerful because getting warriors onto the field and basically just getting to Isolde is the deck's win condition. And since all these cards are warriors, a Hero Lives can get to that. It's not once per turn, keep that in mind. And then with something like Destiny Hero Malicious, you're able to continuously recycle and recur more Maliciouses, which means that you now have even more link fodder to work with. So I think it's really cool to see both of these variants in the top 16. As to which one is better, I can't really say for sure. I think the more streamlined variants seem to do better in terms of overall representation, but I think both versions have their own strengths and weaknesses, and we'll just have to see once more people experiment with the deck how it's going to change. Now, it's going to probably change once this weekend comes up, because while this is the first weekend that the new changes are going to take effect, it's also the first weekend that Sky Strikers are going to be legal, and I guarantee you you're going to start seeing some versions of Goki Sky Striker, or really just Sky Striker anything, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Now this moves us on to Altergeist. There was 4 Altergeists in the top 16. Again, another deck that a lot of people had high hopes for, especially just because Multi-Faker is just an absolutely incredible card. It's really the heart and soul of the deck, and you know, trap cards are actually pretty good against some of these heavy combo decks, especially when you happen to win the die roll. One interesting thing I noticed is that a majority of the Altergeist players were opting to play Wiretap in the side deck. I'm assuming this was just for the mirror match, or realistically just to stop them from getting hit by Evenly Match, because it's a better version of Red Reboot in their respective deck. They realistically don't need to play a card like Red Reboot because they are playing the control game, and Wiretap basically does what Red Reboot does anyway, but it doesn't have the drawback of setting a trap to their opponent's field, because when you're in those control mirror matches, the last thing you want to do is give your opponent more resources or more abilities to trigger Multi-Faker. So Wiretap is the better call here, and I really like that. So definitely when you're going up against your Altergeist matchup, keep in mind that Wiretap should be on your radar. Now that moves us on to Spiral, another deck that a lot of people had a lot of high hopes for, and it seemed to do rather well. Now Spiral Nightmare has divided itself into 2 separate variants. There's the going first Spiral build and the going second Spiral build. Now both of these decks can essentially play the other one's game, but they're both built in different ways, because the going second build, for instance, purposely wants to blind second, so it might play more hand traps and opt to not play more of the brick cards that the going first build might want to play, because those are combo extenders and help them create the just absurdly busted boards that the deck is able to create. I think this is a really strong deck moving forward, because going second, it's able to just break boards rather well. I think it has a very good Altergeist matchup, and I think out of all the decks on here, it's probably the best going second, so that is something you definitely want to keep in mind. One thing that came out of this ARG is that Justin Singh's version was playing some new combo utilizing Power Tool Dragon and 3 copies of Spiral Gear Big Red. It utilizes cards like Dragon Ravine and Destrudo to facilitate the Power Tool Dragon, and basically can just make an entire full board, like, you know, what you would expect with older Destrudo combos, taking advantage of a card like Ancient Fairy Dragon. I think that's pretty innovative. Will it last? Time will tell. I mean, Ravine is a very fragile card, and we'll just have to see what people can come up with once we have the new format take shape. Now that brings us on to Trickstar. Trickstar is another deck that a lot of people expected to still be up at the top tables, and it did not disappoint. Now the best innovation to come out of Trickstar was one player who was main decking 3 copies of Cyber Dragon, and the reason for that is because they had Chimera Tech Mega Fleet Dragon in their extra deck. Now Chimera Tech Mega Fleet Dragon, this is a card I've discussed in the past, and I said it was going to have its time once extra linking became a much more prominent feature in the game. And now that it has, you're going to see a lot more Chimera Tech Mega Fleet Dragon moving forward into this format. Now, the whole purpose of this is that you can special summon Cyber Dragon into your opponent's field. They have you extra linked, and basically you can take out 2 of their monsters that are in the extra monster zones by contact fusing into Chimera Tech Mega Fleet Dragon. They have no way to stop it because it doesn't target, it doesn't destroy, it's not an activated effect, so Tri-Gate Wizard can't stop it. It's just really, really good. And so not only do you break the extra link and free up the extra monster zone, but now you have a 3600 attack monster that you're free to just go in with on your opponent. Now, there is some drawbacks to this because you do have to hopefully hard draw Cyber Dragon, but this kind of circles us back to Sky Strikers, because Toon Table of Contents is a card that a lot of people want to play in that deck because it immediately gets 3 spell cards in your graveyard to make sure you can start getting value out of your Sky Striker spell cards. Now with a card like Toon Cyber Dragon, you can accomplish the exact same thing. It makes Cyber Dragon searchable, you can do all the same combos, and basically it's going to help you just deal with breaking your opponent's board. So I think that's a trend we're also going to start to see if the Extra Link Goki and Spiral decks manage to stay around, but we'll just have to see. It basically all depends on how strong those decks remain in the current format. Then last but not least, there was one Paleo deck. There's always like one or two random decks in the top cuts of these tournaments, but like I said in my top 5 budget decks video, now that Masterpiece is gone, Paleo is a deck that could make a bit of a resurgence. It's kind of a different take on Altergeist because they're both heavy trap control decks, but it's still a deck that, you know, was a tier 1 contender way back only a couple years ago, and the deck really hasn't lost anything. Masterpiece presence just kind of made the deck a little bit more difficult to play. So now that it's gone, I think you might start seeing Paleo just make a bit of a resurgence, but we'll just have to see how popular the deck really gets. Now wrapping everything up, I did want to discuss a couple things. First off, Waking the Dragon only appeared in 1 out of the top 16 players' side decks. That doesn't mean the card is pretty much just gone off the radar. It's something you definitely need to prepare yourself for, but it hasn't been showing up as much. And the interesting thing is here, the trap deck players, the Altergeist and the Paleo players specifically, hell, I guess even Trickstar could throw it in if they wanted to, they don't even have to have it in their side deck, because now that Waking the Dragon is a known threat, players just might be afraid to hit their back row in general because they might side that card in games 2 or 3, whether or not they actually do. So just keep that in mind. It's on a downward trend at the moment, but it's still something you want to make sure that you can out if you manage to wake the dragon. And then last but not least, I did want to discuss the Sky Strikers, because the Sky Strikers will be released this upcoming Friday from the time of recording this video, and the Sky Strikers are really the big question mark here. How much of an impact are they actually going to have? Are they going to have their own pure variant, which is going to do very well, or are they really just going to take these current decks and make them that much better by incorporating cards like Engage, Hornet Bit, just all the really powerful consistency and removal cards that are just flat out generic and good for any deck. So again, we'll just have to wait and see until the next regionals take place, and then with YCS New Jersey taking place the weekend following after, I'm really interested to see how this format plays out. But guys, those are just my thoughts. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about this meta breakdown and how you think we're going to start to see these trends change as we move into the coming weeks. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. And if you found this video helpful, consider backing me on Patreon, because just by pledging only $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.